Hi, everybody. My name is Johnny Romero. I'm with the J3 Collaboration Project, and I have the pleasure and privilege of having with me today Devon Mitchell, who is CEO of DSN Corporation, company out of Newark, Delaware, and owner-operator of Anytime Fitness in Newark, Delaware as well. Devon, thank you for joining me today.
Johnny, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I would like to share a little bit about your background. I know that you are a very successful entrepreneur and very encouraging to be able to see individuals that, again, still young, successful. Let's kind of explain a little bit of the backstory to that and how you were able to become a successful businessman. So, first of all, did you always have the mindset of going into business for yourself? Was that kind of a vision you had from early on, or was that something that kind of developed through different experiences?
I think a little bit of both, right? Growing up in a inner city in New York, it was, hey, go to school, or the other path was on the streets. And my parents and my family was made sure that school was top priority. So it was go to school, get that done, and then any other aspirations after school you can go think about. But growing up in the city, there's so much stuff going on, entrepreneurship opportunities. So those things have always kind of been circling around me, having family members that own businesses. So those things have kind of always been circling around. It just took me a little while to realize there's a path for me to do that.
Great. And I know you have an MBA from Wilmington University,
Yeah.
so congratulations with that. And was business administration um, something that you chose because you had influence from mentors, or you mentioned a little bit about your family as well? What was kind of, I guess, the driving force behind choosing that particular, discipline going to college?
Yeah, yeah. Well, my undergrad is in aeronautical technology. So love planes, always wanted to be around planes, flying them, fixing them. So that was always a passion of mine. So went to school and studied that. That was in it's now called Vaughn College of Aeronautics, which is in New York City. And completed my undergrad, worked for Sikorsky Aircraft, a division of United Technologies, and then relocated to Philadelphia and started working for Boeing. And as part of the growth trajectory in corporate America is as you involve yourself, you get more understanding of the businesses that you're working in, the businesses that you're running. Natural progression is get more education, get your MBA, kind of understand more on the business side, leadership side of the roles that you're going to do. So it was a function of me being a first level manager at Boeing and wanted to be more in that space that led me to go and pursue my master's degree at Wilmington University.
That's awesome. That's a very, very exciting background, and I'm sure we can even have another follow-up conversation about that. Uh, I'm going to,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sure you have a
sure,
lot
of
of interesting
course.
stories with that. That's really cool. Um, so now you graduate, and did you kind of have, you had a lot of options, obviously, because, with that little bit of, you know, story that you shared with us, how did you make a choice to, this is where I'm going to start out, kind of walk me through a little bit of those first, few years when you were out of college and what happened?
So when I got out of college, it was work for an airline or corporate. And initially, work started working for an airlines, Delta Airlines, and then so moved to, and this was then I moved to Connecticut and started working for Sikorsky Helicopters first as a technician and then transitioned to management. So I think the me going to school, getting there, working with other folks, and realizing that hey, there's more you can provide more opportunities. So the focus on getting more access to leadership positions to always really kind of help folks around me to kind of hey, let's help see what we can do as far as leveling the playing field. So I think I've always had this get somewhere and look and see how can you help, how can you optimize your situation where you are, and then really start to go find those pieces to do that.
Excellent. And I do want to emphasize this is a family program, and many of the viewers that are be watching this are probably wondering who is that beautiful woman behind you in the backdrop, and we should probably give a little bit of credit where credit's due. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your wife? How did you meet her? Was that kind of at the same time? How did that align with everything else you were doing? And just share a little bit about her success as well, because I know she's equally a successful businesswoman. So if you
Yeah,
want to share a little bit about that, that'd be
yeah,
great.
definitely. Our conversation here would not have happened without this woman in the back, right? So we met in college. She studied the same path that I studied as well. Met in the library. You know, I was stopped in one day and saw her in the library, and the library became my favorite place. So you know, as moved that my wife started working in Philadelphia at Boeing while I was in Connecticut. So that commute every weekend, 5 hours, getting in the car and coming down to Delaware. And, you know, one day we were this was Monday morning, I would pack up, take all my stuff to work. And then one day it was this is it, you know, this travel is just too much, right? And it was at the time, I think our daughter was 4 years old, 3 to 4 years old, and I've got all my luggage and stuff packed up at the door, and this was maybe 3 o'clock in the morning because I would get up early so I can get to work 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, and my daughter comes downstairs and says, "Hey, Dad, where you going?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to work." And she's like, "Oh, you're not going to work. You're leaving." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "There's all your stuff. You're leaving." No. And that was the day that I said, "All right, you know, this is my last day at Sikorsky." So called my manager and said, it's my 2 weeks. And I said, "Look, literally, this is what just happened." And I said, I'm done. So my plan was to leave Sikorsky and then come back to Delaware. And prior to leaving, I had applied for a job at Boeing Aircraft just because we wanted to be closer. And literally, maybe 2 days later, I come home and there's a offer letter in the mail. Right? I open up the mail, and there's an offer letter for me to come to Philadelphia and be an operations manager in one of the manufacturing areas. So we talk all the time, and it was just divine intervention that here it is, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, a little kid gets up and says, "You're leaving," and it just crushed you. Just for me, it crushed me. So I said, "Look, this is can't do this anymore. Let's find something else to do," and that's what led me to get to Boeing. And I worked to Boeing for about 5 years. And similar to what happened with our daughter, my wife was going through after our second child, our weight loss journey, and you know, we we went to a wedding, and I don't know what happened, but someone had said they commented on my wife's weight, and this was maybe 2 months after our second child, so she was in a space that it was, not her full confident self. And I think, that bruised her. And we got home that Sunday and she says, Devon, that's it. I'm done. I said, what do you mean? She says, I'm done. I've got to lose this weight. And, so I said, well, you're great. You're fine. And she's like, no. So I said, all right, whatever you need me to do, I'll help. And from that day to the day we opened up the gym, I've seen my wife transform to not only to back to where she was, but really engaging folks in the community to work out, get their nutrition, really engage and energize folks. I've I seen my wife. My wife had my mother working out, and in my years, my all I've heard is that my mom was an athlete. The only time I seen my mom run was when she chased me or my brothers. Right, that was it. And I see my mother working out, doing squats, doing crunches in the backyard. And I said, if you can make my mother do that, you can make anybody do anything. So that was just kind of that, brain where I dropped in there. And this is, we're going on a couple of months, years here. And I'm driving to work to Boeing. And so Anytime Fitness comes in the picture. I take a trip out to St. Louis for work, and I open up an entrepreneur. It's called Entrepreneur Magazine. So I'm reading it, and Anytime Fitness in the magazine. And at the time they were number two, the number two franchise, but number one in fitness. So I started reading it. Flight was long, and I read, and I said, you know what? If I had a gym, like this is what it would be. It would be similar to this, right? Give folks access whenever they wanted, and just kind of, for me, it felt more like family. Like this is what I would do, and read it. That was it. Maybe a month after, I'm driving to work, normal day, nothing different. And I remember 95 between Wilmington and Philadelphia. And I said, today's my last day. And I was like, what do you mean your last day? I was like, all right, let me keep going to work. I got in the parking lot, parked the car, got into my office, met the team, says, hey, how's everybody doing? Got everybody set. Called my manager and said, today's my last day. And like my manager looked at me and says, what are you talking about? Like you've got to be kidding me. I said, he's like, Devon, the things that you do where you are, positioning as far as how soon you've been here and things that you've been able to accomplish, you can't just pick up one day and leave. And I said, I agree with you. I said, but this is not, this is something greater than me just not wanting to be here, right? Because when, I love planes. Planes is, put me around some planes in an airport and jet fuel, I'm a happy camper. So walking away from that was, it wasn't when you say painful, because I know I was walking into something greater than where I was. So for me, it wasn't a time where this is not what I want to do, because I knew I was walking into that purpose. I just said, all right, I'm going to surrender and let's do what we need to do. And 2 weeks later, I gave him my 2 weeks notice, and 2 weeks later, I left. And it's so weird that as I was going through that, Anytime Fitness, Chuck and Dave, the co-founders, called me and said, "Hey, we'd love for you to join the Anytime Fitness family." And I was, it was one of those things where I was like, you guys got to be kidding me. That that's the last thing I really thought about. I saw it. I gave them a call, had an interview with them, and I'm like, these guys are great, man. Like I would love to do this. And so when they called and it says, "Hey, we'd love for you to join," I thought it was a joke. I was like, really? like, you guys. So I said, oh, this is great. This is good stuff. And that's after that really started the journey of opening up and Anytime Fitness, going through the, identifying all the demographics, what you need to do, where you should put it. And it, really was my wife's journey of me being able to look and say, well, how can you help? And walking all the way through what that help looks like. And because I said, wherever it takes us, that's where we're going to end up. So it was because of this beautiful woman behind me saying, hey, I've got to do something different. And my love for her and us, that I said, I have an opportunity, a little more flexibility, that allowed me to really tap into my entrepreneurial spirit and make that decision to do it.
That's awesome. There's a lot there to unpack. I really
Yes.
like the fact that the family component is so important in life, but I think in business too. And I think, unfortunately, it's not always that case. Many people, I'm sure, watching, um, when you look in the mirror, a lot of times decisions are made out of necessity, out of wanting to be successful. And unfortunately, a lot of times family, sacrifices a lot or suffers a lot in the process. And so I commend you for sharing that intimate part. And really, I think it's important because I agree with everything you mentioned, because I think a lot of times, you know, you have to make a decision that is based off of what should be the most important things, and family should always be on top of the list. The other part, though, I think, which is valuable, is that I think there's this impression a lot of times, and I'm generalizing, but if you're educated, here you are, someone who has a lot of options. Very few people get a bachelor's degree in aeronautical technology, right? Aviation maintenance. That unto itself, no one would ever question the value and the success someone could have in that space. But to really be willing to do something that helped you enjoy your family and keep the balance and all of that, I think there's a lot to process, because a lot of people say, you know, I'm an intelligent person, I'm educated, I don't want to get into any type of franchise model because I can figure it out on my own. And I think there's kind of like a part of that pride, right? Where it's kind of like, I don't want someone to tell me how things are done. But let me ask you this. You mentioned, that you have literally um, senior leadership. Chuck being one of those at with Anytime Fitness, well, self-esteem brands, and specifically Anytime Fitness reaching out to you. Could you share a little bit about what exactly it was that impressed you specifically about self-esteem brands? Um, Anytime Fitness, obviously, you had the first experience from the user side, right? And that brought you in. But what made you make the decision of, yeah, you know what, I'm willing to invest in this model, and I think this is a path that I can be successful in? If you don't mind sharing a little bit about the specifics of what convinced you that was the right decision for you.
Yeah. I think first was having a conversation with Chuck and Dave. And, prior to that conversation, went through the vetting process, gave them a call, spoke to the franchise consultant, and had the conversation with them, then spoke to Chuck and Dave. And what I really got from both of those gentlemen is that they cared about the community, they cared about the members, they cared about their teams, they really cared. And that showed to me that being a part of something that kind of espouse my same values, right? That I care about my family, I care about my community, and I want them to win and I want them to grow as much as I can help them. And I got the sense, that's the sense I got from Chuck and Dave. So, having that for me, it was awesome.
Thank you. And just for the viewers' benefit, we're referencing Chuck Runyon, CEO, co-founder at Self-Esteem Brands, as well as David Mortensen, co-founder and president of Self-Esteem Brands. So, now you're beginning, and now this has been eight plus years now. Because my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking 2014. You start, running your own Anytime Fitness. What has that experience been like? Was it what you anticipated? And what things have you learned since the beginning that if you could go back, I always like to ask this question too, it's kind of twofold. So things you've learned, but what would you share with yourself, the younger you, if anything, that would be valuable advice for someone watching right now and trying to decide, I'm at a crossroads myself, and I'm not quite sure what options are available to me, specifically as we're referencing diversity, the African American community, even more limits are at least felt or perceived. So if you don't mind sharing some of that, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I think what I would say is you have more available to you than you know. And I have a saying that look within and leverage. You may have someone in your network that you could ask that question, that you could reach out to and find out. But for me, it was as I looked to say, well, what could I do? It's really about, well, why reinvent the wheel? Like, this is already being done, right? It's ready made. Now I join and I add I add my value to it. So I come in and say, this is the space, this is what it is. But now I get to build what that culture looks like, right? Now I get to build my own fitness family. And the things that have grown out of that itself has been tremendous. Like, you know, coming out of the gym, I get to meet so many great people and get an opportunity to shed some of my experiences with them, help them engage, understanding that, like, hey, you're the owner, and I'm like, yeah, and it's like, wow, that's cool. And well, how do you do that? Like, how'd you do that? Well, hey, I'd love to learn. And being able to see folks when they come in the gym and realize that I'm the owner, that like their spirit lights up, like, this guy looks like me, like, oh, this guy, like, it's a young dude, like, what's going on? Well, maybe I could do this, right? And I actually get to see that whole transformation where someone comes in and says, hey, how you doing? Have a conversation. And then it goes there, and I get to see someone say, wow, I think I can do that. Even if they don't, say that at that time, but you get to see, hey, I think I can, wow, like, there's someone that looks like me that's doing this. That gives me confidence that I can do it as well. So, you know, I've, as a entrepreneur, as an anytime fitness owner, I tell people I've got one of the greatest opportunities in the world, because everyone that comes through the gym doors, they want to come through the gym doors, right? Like, there's a they are looking for a solution to whatever's going on in their life. And, you know, someone opens those doors and they walk in, and sometimes it's just a conversation on what's going on in life, right? And they think they came in to get a training package, but then realizing that, they get a training package, they get a membership, and then they go home and they be a better dad or a better wife or friend or whatever, because coming to the gym and meeting me allowed them to kind of see that what's possible, right? See that there's opportunities there for you to do, and then realize that, you don't have to do it by yourself. You could, it's my wife's there, she shows up when she can. And knowing that you've got a network behind you that can support you and help you, I think it's tremendous, right? That when folks understand that you have support, then you feel stronger. You feel that you can do anything once you know that you've got that coverage.
Absolutely. No, I think those are very key points, and we really appreciate you sharing that with us. I think the other component you kind of touched on, and I'll kind of circle back to, is we all kind of need at some point mentorship, guidance, and do you have any experiences where either you've been the mentor or received that with SEB specifically that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, as a mentor, it's helping folks come into my facility and think that it's possible for them to own a facility. And one day it was just kind of really understanding, how do you help? Is that something that you can do to help more men and women that look like you in the underrepresented community get into this space? And it was just one of those things I thought about. And then as those things started to go on in SEB, I connected with Tony Nicholson, and this was years ago. Tony Nicholson was an operator, went out to Minnesota, and again, right, going out to Minnesota and seeing Tony, I was like, oh, Tony looks like me. Like, okay, okay, I'm. It's not just me, right? There's other people that are doing this, and then when you start meeting other people, you realize that we all have a bunch of the same values. Like, we all love our families. We all want to do things for our families. And you meet people and you realize that, hey, we're all on the same track, right? Some of us may be down the road a little further. Some of us are now getting on the road, but it's different when you see someone that looks like you, right? Because for whatever reason, there's a comfort. And you may think, hey, it's a comfort, but it's this, okay, without even speaking to them or doing anything, it's that person looks like me. I think that gives me a bit more confidence that I can stretch for further. I can reach for more. And I've always kind of looked at that space and that passion, right? Is that I'm always willing to listen and learn from everyone, other communities, other every and ethnicities, just to learn, and then realize, like, you and I are the same thing, right? Like, we do the same things, siblings, friends, families. It's the only thing is, we don't know that, and that's the kind of space where we've been in. And I think what really brought me to this point was after George Floyd's murder in Minnesota. That kind of really um, shook me to the core, where I'm like, wait, wow, this is crazy. and I didn't really think anything about it. And then a few weeks later, there was a video that came out from a franchise owner that I think was one of the trainers that put out something that was disparaging about the murder. And at that time, I for me, it was like, wow, this is, I really don't know if I would still want to be part of Anytime Fitness. And even though I knew that this wasn't Anytime Fitness, right? This was someone that worked at a franchise and didn't represent Anytime Fitness's leadership, didn't represent that. It represented the brand. And I represent the brand. So, if someone sees that and comes and says, hey, you're part of this brand, that this is how folks are going to be thinking about that. I literally was typing up a letter and say, hey, I'm going to send it off to Chuck and Dave. And midway through the letter, I said, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna stay and help Anytime Fitness, self-esteem brand. I'm gonna help them um, recruit and get more folks that look like me, so I can be a part of growing and changing that event that happened. So after that, I my letter changed from I'm leaving to I'm gonna stay, and I'm gonna raise my hand to say I want to help change that dynamic or be a part of that solution.
That's a awesome message and experience. I commend you for all of that, and I think it says a lot, not just about your character and your desire to not just make money, right, but to really have a positive impact on the community. Because um, when you run your own business, there's that balancing act of, am I so focused on profitability? Do I really want to, get involved with rolling up my sleeves like the way you've done and the way Self-Esteem Brands has embraced, this initiative now, the J3 collaboration project. We are very appreciative and excited to partner with SEB so that we can, like you just said, see the individuals in these communities that reflect the qualities and look like us, whether we be Hispanic, Latino, African American, anything within the BIPOC community. But it's great to be able to see someone like yourself make that a choice, take the action, and move the needle really. Because a lot of times, when we think about diversity, which is really what the J3 collaboration is all about, it isn't just checking a box. It really is, grassroots. It's really boots in the ground and doing, not just saying. And so I commend you for being part of the action and setting the lead and setting the pace a little bit, because there's a lot of work to be done still. But we are very happy to have individuals like yourself collaborating with us so that we can share in the race. It is a marathon, right? It's not going to happen overnight, but we are very optimistic with the opportunities that are on the horizon. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I do want to respect your time, but I do want to ask you a final question. Is there anything you feel you'd like to share with those watching and viewing that you feel is significant, and perhaps whether it be an experience, a quote, whatever you'd like, this is your time.
Thank you. For me, I think I said it earlier, right? It's look within and leverage that. You know, you're at a place in life now that you may think that you don't have, but take a step back and just kind of do an inventory. Who do you know? Who do you have? What could you ask? And you'll be amazed of what that support's going to look like. And really don't be afraid to, and I say it sounds easy, don't be afraid to ask, right? But knowing that if you want to do more, raise your hand and ask that question, and the help will show up. You're going to get that help, right? Engage your community, and really ask yourself what value can you provide, and then just dive in and push through.
Thank you. Well said. And that's a great way to end this conversation. It's been a pleasure. We'll definitely have to have you back on. This is Johnny Romero with the J3 Collaboration Project. Thank you for joining us. Please like, subscribe, share. See you next time.